it down and start. Yes. Good morning. Welcome all to Community Church, and welcome all to a Peace and Justice congregation since 1920. We have 104 years of good trouble in the city of Boston and on the planet. And we like to start with the lighting of a candle to bring us together. A candle for unity and strength, and a candle for remembrance, and a candle for the still small voice of justice in a place of what seems like increasing injustice. Just a candle for the belief in the arc of the moral universe. A candle for hope. If I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle 1,000,000 miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. Our search for justice is about love. That's what that song says to me. It's by my friend Cindy Callett, and I open for it. I open with it very frequently. This church, what do you call it, a service or a meeting, or when I was on the search for the assembly permit for this building, the guy kept saying, "So, what is your mass about?" This is a guy in City Hall in Boston. We finally got the assembly permit, and we are legitimate in certain places. But if you believe the Congress, there's a new, what would you call it, HUIC, House Un-Israel Activities Committee, that can withdraw the 501c3 of anyone they deem terrorist. And it makes you think, but it also gives you inspiration to know that in 1957, our minister, Reverend Donald Lothrop, went before the local version of the HUAC, which was up on the State House, and gave a very famous speech, basically speaking truth to this stupid committee. Basically a have you no shame, have you no decency speech. 3 weeks later, the committee was disbanded, and we moved forward with our search for justice and our good trouble. So we are so glad that you're here, and I'm going to be as brief as I can, and we don't start with a song because this whole program is about song, an amazing song from just a remarkable, what do they call him now? Content creator, influencer. Maybe the only one that I follow pretty carefully, and it's hard to follow. There's so much of it. But I want to tell you about a couple of things, and I always put up books as we love our books, and some that have come in recently are by upcoming speakers. This is Kelly Carter Jackson, professor of Africana Studies at Wellesley College. This is called "We Refuse: A Forceful History of Black Resistance." She'll be with us in February. And we have Norman Finkelstein, "Gaza, an Inquest into Its Martyrdom." And Norman will be with us on January 17th. And there's a new addition to our speaker list coming up. Norman will be virtual only, 7 p.m., January 17th. And then we have Mohammed Marandi in February, joining us from Tehran. Thank you, Amar. January 31st, 11 a.m. because of the time difference. And that reminds me of another speaker who will be here just next Friday. We had him programmed for 7 p.m., but he was coming from Bethlehem, and his trip was canceled, and he still wanted to do the 7 p.m. show, and there they were, Mazen and Jesse Kumsia, that wonderful couple from Bethlehem. It was 2 a.m. there. They didn't mind. Let's just do this, and he gave us a very, very inspiring talk, and he will be back here this Friday, December 6th. Am I right? He's been here 3 or 4 times, and he's always just such an inspiration. He is the director of the Palestine Museum of Natural History and also the Palestine Institute for Sustainability and Biodiversity, and is just a remarkably inspiring speaker and human being. So that's the few announcement we have. One more. Next Sunday, we have Renee Johnstone. Renee works on the proliferation of cop cities throughout the United States after what happened in Atlanta. Tortuguita presente, we say. And Renee will be here on Sunday. We will also have a facilitator here named Reverend Irene Monroe. You've heard her on GBH with her partner, Reverend Emmett Price. They do a podcast called All Revved Up. Too many revs in one place. I'm not a rev. I'm an e-rev. Proudly so. So that's just a few announcements of upcoming things happening here at Community Church of Boston. I hope you get a sense of the wealth of possibility we have. I want to send a shout out this morning to Amar Ahmad, who has got us these 2 amazing speakers coming up, Norman Finkelstein and Mohammed Marandi. Please tune in. We have now almost 60,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, and we have some speakers like Richard Wolff who garner an enormous number of views. And don't hire speakers based on that, or not even hire. Ask if they'll come grace our stage based on what we are and what we've had for many, many decades. Okay, enough. One last thing, and I promise this is it. I'm dealing with a couple of setbacks, or I'm wearing many hats, and one of them today is cook. Luis Guzman, our wonderful, amazing, stalwart backbone of this place, is in Virginia with his sister and sister's family on this weekend, and so I'm putting together something for us. And it won't be by Luis's standards something, but it'll hopefully be to your liking. We always, not always, but frequently go to Eduardo Galeano for inspiration. Uruguayan writer of I own maybe 30 Galeano titles, both in English and Spanish. The amazing 3-volume set, Memory of Fire, a history of the Americas, told in little vignettes, kind of like what you're about to hear. I haven't even read this yet, but it's for December 1st. Oh, it's about Costa Rica, where I was born and grew up. And so it's called Farewell to Arms. Costa Rica's president, Don Pepe Figueres, once said, "Here the only thing wrong is everything." And in the year 1948, he disbanded the armed forces. Many were those who decried it as the end of the world, or at least the end of Costa Rica. But the world kept on turning, and Costa Rica was kept safe from wars and coup d'etat. Pepe Figueres, oh yeah. Also a bizarre raconteur of a figure that I won't go into, but that's Eduardo Galeano's December 1st entry. The Gospel according to Galliano. And the congregation says, "Thanks be to Galliano." So I'll be up and down from the kitchen to here as we have a big fat piece of content to digest during our lunch afterwards, and hopefully we'll have some Q&A at the end. And this is a movable feast, free form, and we get to hear from not only David but several visitors whom he will introduce. Folks, this is the people's troubadour. When he's nearby, we drop everything and we hear so much of what he has to say for us, but don't have enough time to hear all of it. Folks, David Rovix, yeah.
Thank you, Dean. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be back. And we also have some fabulous musical guests with us today to make the program even more interesting. The first is all the way from Western Massachusetts, Ben Grosscup, a fabulous singer-songwriter, director of People's Music Network, and last I checked anyway, and still. And yeah, so I've asked him to do a couple songs first.
Okay. Well, it's amazing to be here, and David, it's amazing to open for you. I have been following your career for 25 years. I met you about 25 years ago. I remember it was like a small anarchist squat in south of Minneapolis where I met you, and you introduced me that night to a singer-songwriter named Jim Page from Seattle, Washington, a good friend of yours, an amazing singer-songwriter. He wrote this song a few decades ago called Palestine. He updated it earlier this year, and this is my adaptation of the song by Jim Page, Palestine. Tell you a story, I'll be quick as I can. The terrible news from the Holy Land. Pictures of children etched in my brain, covered in rubble and wails of pain. Jews and Arabs lived one and the same for 1,000 years till the Zionists came. They came like a river, came like a flood. Al-Nakba was written on the wall in blood. In Palestine, in Palestine, there's talk about the settlers from far away. Talk about the money from the USA, the blast of bombs, thousands dead, killer drone hovering overhead. What do you do when they destroy your home and say your land is not your own. Do you dare to resist? Do you stand up with a gun in your fist? In Palestine, in Palestine. They talk about peace like it's a moral obligation, but there can't be peace under occupation. They talk about talks to the beat of the drum. 70 years now, no justice done. Let's talk about who we endorse. Smug politicians who ride an iron horse. No wonder why it seems to be such an undemocratic version of democracy. Sing with me. In Palestine, in Palestine, let me hear you. In Palestine, in Palestine. Let me tell you a story. I'll be quick as I can. This terrible news from the Holy Land. Thank you. So around that time I met David. I was part of a movement called the Voices in the Wilderness. So that was the name of the organization. And we were trying to end the sanctions on Iraq. 1999, it was kind of a time like now, in the midst of another genocide against an Arab population led by a Democratic Party administration. But in Iraq this time, a war fought through hybrid warfare, sanctions, starvation of the population, preventing medicines from getting into the country. And of course, occasional bombings as well was all part of it. It really shaped my own worldview from an early age about how power in this society works. So this song has been marinating and stewing for a while, since about 2016 when I wrote it. Brought it back for this recent election. It's called The Lesser Evil and the Greater Good. I didn't choose this world, but there's choices I make. Like who to call a friend and what chances to take. Come election time, the choice is always the same. Vote for the lesser evil or refuse to play their game. When W. Bush was president, he was the worst, or so it seemed. Who predicted Donald Trump in 2016? But even when Obama came in on a wave of hope, as our country slid toward greater evil, he just greased the slope. Bush Sr. bombed Iraq, which Clinton then maintained after 13 years of sanctions, 500,000 lives were claimed. W's brutal occupation killed 1 million more. Now Biden's genocide in Gaza could spark the next world war. What's left of this democracy is rotted at the core. So what will you make your vote count for? Neglected by the media and feared by elites, the Green Party is rising from the movements in the streets. We're learning of a different choice to lead the United States, but you can't hear about it on the ABC debate. Greens stand for a vision our country needs to hear. Peace now and no more fossil fuels within the next 6 years. I feel a fear that's rising, 'cause there's danger up ahead. And I can't support a leader when war is what they spread. What's left of this democracy is rotted at the core. So what will you make your vote count for? What's left? What's left of this democracy is rotted at the core. So what will you make your vote count for? When we're fighting for our future, the rich want us to lose, but they can't stop us from standing up for the principles we choose. Our votes show what we stand for. That's why I say we should reject the lesser evil and vote for the greater good. Reject the lesser evil and vote for the greater good. Thank you so much, David Rovix, everybody. Thank you.
Ben, could we get you to do Love Me, I'm a Liberal, though? Would you do it? You got it?
Yes, I would be happy to. So, thank you, David. All right, Love Me, I'm a Liberal. This song was written by Phil Oakes in 1965. And I'm not going to sing the 1965 version. Don't worry about it. But I want you to know where the song comes from. How many of you already know where the song comes from? Okay, there's a bunch of people who've heard this song. I don't know how many of you have heard my rewrite of the song. Okay, not many. So you're going to enjoy this, I think. This is the song on my YouTube channel that has the most views by far, but it's a classic song because it says so much about liberal hypocrisy, and what I've done is taken all the original events, kind of like circa 1950s, 1960s, and updated them to today. So. I mourned the Tiananmen martyrs, whose protests were brutally quelled. And I cheered when Mandela walked freely after so many years in a cell. But Mr. Assange still belongs in prison. Those secrets were not his to tell. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. That's your part. I attend diversity trainings, and I leave feeling so reassured. I love Oprah and magic and Foreman. It's great seeing blacks become entrepreneurs. But don't go and vote third party. That's not the way to be heard. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. I cheered when Kamala was chosen, my faith in the system restored. And I'll never forgive Ralph Nader for the election he stole from Al Gore. And my neighborhood welcomes all races of people with high credit scores. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. Voters need more education to achieve democracy's aims. Our enemies spread memes in their news feeds, sowing division and national shame. But if you want socialized health care, you really must be insane. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. I listen to All Things Considered. I'd consider anyone's views. You know, I've read D'Angelo and Kendi, and I'm probably more woke than you. But when it comes to the arming of Israel, there's no one who's more white and blue. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. I vote for the Democratic Party. They're strengthening NATO command. I support Bono's benefit concerts and buy everything endorsed by his brand. We're gonna make poverty history, posting to Facebook, taking a stand. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. Sure, once I was young and impulsive. I wore every conceivable pin. I fought for a socialist future, which I actually thought we might win. But I've grown older and wiser, and that's why I'm turning you in. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. Thank you so much. Thank you, and friends, let's welcome David Rovix.
And we will be joined today by Eric Royer on banjo. And if you've listened to many of my albums, you've heard him a lot. And let's see. Let's do Workers of the World to start with. Well, I could tune to a note. I don't know. Playing with other musicians, then I think I should be in tune to something. They say don't tune to the banjo.
No.
And this is Kamala Emanuel, all the way from Brisbane, Australia.
Hello. Kamala against genocide, I hasten to add.
She's thinking of forming an organization, Kamala's Against Genocide. Could be a really neat bunch. Very international gathering, definitely. It would have to probably be in India, I think, for practical purposes, given how difficult it is to get a visa from India to go anywhere. Yeah. We'll start with a song that Eric might have heard before, and then we'll move on to songs he's never heard before. Just to, because that whenever he plays with me, I like to keep him on his toes and make sure it's like all fresh material, you know. The 5th month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. You'll still see people marching in every corner of the earth. St. John to Santiago, Kerala to Perth, all keeping alive the fantasy what could happen down the line when the workers of the world combine. You can see us gathering early in the morn. Some are celebrating the shackles we have shorn, while so many billions are just waiting for the moment that we might stop losing the class war, when someday we can all say, yeah, we're doing fine. When the workers of the world combine. When that time arrives, maybe it looks like May Day, like a festival that comes home and doesn't go away. Every race and gender, every walk and station, with the working class united, every land and nation. Then just watch what happens when we follow the same sign. When the workers of the world combine. 5th month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. And then we changed the tuning on you, and let's see, this is an A minor perhaps. Just today, the United Nations announced it was too dangerous to deliver any aid to Gaza. And North Gaza has been cut off for a month and a half already now from any aid. If you listen to the Western media, the Israeli politicians and generals will tell you lies about aid getting through, and they just get played on Western media as if those people are reliable. It's like asking Nazis to tell us what are you doing in the concentration camps. Oh, we're bringing lots of aid in. Oh, that's nice. Everything is burning as I watch the video. She crawls out of the ruins, venturing to go out in search of water, the final human need. Although the consequences are almost guaranteed, as she goes out in the open beneath the killer drones, which aims its sights on her, then shreds her to the bone, then waits for any people who might be fool enough to try come to fetch her body beneath the smoke-filled sky. 2 million people behind the ghetto walls wait for 2-ton bombs to fall, to crush and burn the schools and tents where your whole extended family went. Scores more murdered with each passing day, with so many more on the edge of being taken away. Surrounded by tanks that fire at will, and the rest of the world stands by still. Completely surrounded with no food getting in. Ghost-like faces, impossibly thin. Kids that look like babies, babies born. Thirsty, starving, and forlorn. Men are being taken to who knows where. The elderly, the babies, the wounded in chairs, with donkey carts and wagons south on cue, as the drones above the rubble ordered them to do. Plan, which means kill all the kids that you possibly can. Anyone moving, soldiers take aim. Who they are doesn't matter, they're all the same. Make no distinctions, orders decree. Killing them all is just how it must be. And right now in New Jersey, you can buy shares in the resort Jared Kushner plans to build there. Well, I have to do certain songs that just because we can't keep singing songs about genocide, because that actually then everybody just goes and jumps off a cliff, and it's the opposite of the intended effect, you know. No cliff jumping after the show. I wrote this song before Twitter existed, which I don't really remember. But it seems like I thought, whenever I think about the era before Twitter, I think, oh, that was back when everybody got along and could communicate. And but then I realized I wrote this song back then, so it must not be true. Oh, and it's in the people's key of, oh my God, what is it? F. Great thing to do to a banjo player. Capos, tune changes. They have to change the tuning every time, you know, with banjo players. Every time you, yeah. We just put a capo on the guitar. It's much easier. I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard. So fuck off all you drivers and your yuppie hordes sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. Look at you people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame, all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather, and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It
It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school.
I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you.
I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal.
I'll just keep on moshing to anti-flag and crass
until there are no differences in gender, race, or class.
all you brainwashed breeders, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you.
I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy.
Whether or not it works, I know it is the case
that only direct action can save the human race.
So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you.
I am not a pacifist. I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows.
By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you.
Major in that F sharp. Song for the Highland clearances. Let's do that. F sharp, just to test you. It's what's that? Oh, and yep, John has the best shirt on. It was his idea to make that into a T-shirt. It was a very good idea. It is a very strange and awkward and awful thing about reality in history in settler colonial countries, from this one to Israel, that the settlers are overwhelmingly refugees. Sometimes it was the only place they were allowed to go to if they wanted to get out of wherever they were trying to escape from. And in the 19th century, Norway lost almost half of its population. Sweden lost like a third of its population. Ireland, most of its population. The Scottish Highlands, most of its population. They all came over this way, mostly. Australia as well, New Zealand, South Africa, other places. Overwhelmingly, the US and Canada.
Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children, but someone said they owned what those 4 generations had called their homes across the Scottish nation. Allotments kept on shrinking while the rent would only rise. One by one the broken crofters left the open skies for frozen shores of Nova Scotia in a far-off colony, or somewhere else across the sea. Once upon a century, from the ways of old, from something like the golden rule to the rule of gold, it's just the logic of the market. Supply and demand says to drive the people from the land. Instead of eerie silence reverberating all around among the gardeners and shepherds, you would hear the sound of the pipes and drums and choirs of the songs that would be sung and the stories that were told in a Gaelic tongue. Once upon a century, you'd never think it could to turn into a field what had been a neighborhood. Once there were the promises of loyalty or clan, and then there was just profit if you can. If we travel back to a different time and space. It was possible for most to afford to live someplace, but it's the logic of the market, each investor's conviction. More money is just grounds for an eviction. Once upon a century, they cleared the highlands for the sheep. Most folks did not resist as the rent became too steep. They packed their things and moved, scattered far and near. You'd never know that they once were here. Just for the whims of capital, the biggest profits for the banks. You fight a war for empire, and clearance is your thanks. From the crofts of Scotland to the sidewalks of LA, if anything has changed, who can say? Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children. What's that? 35 children? Oh, sure. We'll do another one. Just written a few weeks ago. Oh, yeah. And, of course, I intentionally do it different keys every time because not just to mess up the banjo player, but because it's actually sounds better if you don't do two in the same key in a row, you know, or at least in the same position on the guitar, I find. It's one of the tricks to make people think that you're actually doing more musical variety than you're actually, you know, there's a lot more musical variety than it really is, you know. I turn on the news and I listen to the head of UNICEF say there are 35 kids in Gaza being killed every day by snipers and by drones or by fighter jets. I don't know what to do with this knowledge coming from the TV set. I hear the woman speaking and all that comes to mind is imagining the scene among the rubble I might find. If my family were in that building as it fell to the ground, and all the pieces of body parts that would then be found. It's enough to drive you crazy, and now I'm completely mad, just from hearing the news day after day and being someone's dad. Just from hearing all the excuses about how it's justified, chalk it up to collateral damage, how all those babies died. Them in a school bus or in a classroom with their friends, playing soccer in a field when the school day ends. Then I imagine the hospitals where the survivors go, their tiny bodies burnt and wrapped in gauze from head to toe. Each day I wake up and wonder if this might be the time when those who hold the purse strings have had enough of the war crimes. Then instead I'm hearing of the latest ones who have died in the unrelenting slaughter of Israel's kindercide. I turn on the news and I listen to the head of UNICEF say there are 35 kids in Gaza being killed every day. Same tuning. So we were just, Kamala and I, on this tour of Europe. We've just been on
we were listening to a very long audiobook, but it was a very long tour, so we actually, it was no problem, 25-hour long audiobook. Wonderful book, actually published 10 years ago, called The Burglary, and I highly, just as a piece of writing, it's very good. You'll really enjoy it. You might learn something as well. I certainly did. I knew about COINTELPRO, and I wanted to write a song about it because as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that a lot of people don't know about COINTELPRO, don't know it existed, and don't know it still exists. And, so it's really important for people to know that the FBI has paid informants on every college campus in the country, and more than 100,000 people who are actively informing them on everything happening in their neighborhoods. And this has been going on since the 19-teens, and there's no reason to believe that it's not happening now, because we have very good evidence that it has been going on at least up until 2013 or so, when Snowden, so we don't need a new big huge dump of information every 10 years to prove that this thing is still going on. It's going on. It's been happening since the 19-teens. The FBI is very much doing it. The CIA and all kinds of other entities do very similar things, both domestically and internationally. The CIA does a lot of domestic surveillance as well. And this is all just a matter of the public record. If you want to check out the Church Committee hearings in Congress, they were very interesting, but they don't even come close to revealing the full extent of the assassinations, dirty tricks, surveillance, infiltration, disinformation campaign that the FBI has been engaging in this country for its entire existence. And we'll do other songs about the earlier days of the FBI. I've been writing about the FBI for their whole existence. There's lots of good stuff to write about with concern to the FBI, because they kill all the best people, they inevitably. But in 1971, when folks in Philadelphia were realizing that everybody was becoming really paranoid because there seemed to be agents all over the place spreading disinformation and doing things to divide and conquer the left, and hanging out in white vans and surveilling people and all this, and they were wondering, like, what the hell is going on here? Just how extensive is this? What is the FBI doing? And so they formed a committee, and they organized, learned how to pick locks, and developed all kinds of other skills, and they burglarized the FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania, and disclosed, published ultimately, because of some good journalists. Most of them just handed the stuff over to the FBI, but the Washington Post at that time published what they were trying to get out there, and so that's how the world found out about COINTELPRO. And 40 years later, we found out who these folks were who raided those offices, and that made for a whole other fascinating story, because they were your neighbors. They called themselves the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI. The U.S. war on Vietnam was about a decade on, with millions of lives already gone. At home, the war was on descent. In practical form, what that meant was billy clubs and prison time. But beyond that, feeling of a microphone under every hat, the sense of being watched, not knowing who to trust. Some folks in Philadelphia decided that they must get to the bottom of it, and to find out why they formed the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. They were tired of the secrecy, the men who hide in vans with headphones sitting inside. Tired of the paranoia that seemed so on the rise. Professor Davidon was intent on removing the disguise. He brought a group together, and they began to learn the skills that would be needed to carry out a plan to commit a burglary. See what's in those drawers if they liberate all the folders filed on that floor. In the town of Media, they'd risk everything to try the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. Forsyth became a locksmith as good as anyone. The burglars carried out their plan as it had been spun. Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali were having their big fight. Hundreds of millions of people were watching that night, including anyone who might have noticed what was going down.
in that sleepy little town. They made off with the files and they got away. Went off to the countryside to see what they might say. They started reading on the farm beneath the Pennsylvania sky. The Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. What they found was shocking, things everyone needed to know. This was when the world first learned of COINTELPRO, that the FBI had agents on every campus in the country, a system of informants so very like the Stasi, a police state on a mission to undermine and neutralize, to create fear and paranoia by spreading rumors and lies. They had 1,000 files with stories of the way the dirty tricks campaigns across the USA, the assassinations carried out by the American spy, the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. The burglars uncovered a story so old none of them were alive when it began to be told. Since the FBI was formed, right up until now, the documents documented exactly how the secret police carry out their secret deeds with distracting and destroying, their tactics and their creed. The tip of the iceberg was all they really got, unlike the millions and millions of files which have not ever seen the light of day, except by and by the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. Later, a director would haltingly admit if it wasn't for the burglars, it would still remain a secret. What they won't acknowledge, though, is the fact, regardless of how the spy leaders react, according to the rules of their nefarious game, all they did was change the name. And if you're wondering where the agents are in the modern day, just log on to social media and see what they say. If someone's your campaign, we just might know why, because of the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. The Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. Does it sound like a European ambulance to you? Yeah. The American ambulances are a lot harder to imitate on a spreaded instrument. Yeah, exactly. The Doppler effect in there even. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, good idea. Yeah. This is in last April, well, I guess it was last February, I started getting targeted by a Zionist troll farm. But just before that, Facebook sent me a notification. Facebook sent me a message saying we're starting this new program where you get awarded for increased engagement on the platform. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I've been picked to be on the beta. Okay, fine. I have not gotten any engagement on Facebook in many years since they changed their algorithms and stopped, highlighting any kind of political content. I mean, I'm basically blacklisted on that platform, as are so many other people. Now I can't even invite people to events for months now. It doesn't work. They've got that function disabled. But anyway, they started this program, as the ass and the elbow are not cooperating. So they started this program to award people for engagement, and then so I got like my first check of first $6 from Facebook for 1 month of my typical hardly any engagement. But then I got targeted by this troll farm at the end of February. So for that week, and then the whole month of March and April, I was getting these notifications from Facebook that were congratulating me for the increased engagement, and they told me like exactly how much. It's like 27,000 insults in the month of April alone. Although they didn't say they were insults, they obviously weren't reading. They were just looking at the metadata and like, oh, you're getting awesome engagement. Yeah, they're all Israeli troll farms. They're all bots. Calling me an anti-Semite, and
but I got $212 from that each month. They did it, something like that. Although the amount of time I had to spend, blocking troll accounts, if I were getting paid by the hour, it would be, work below minimum, But then they stopped. Did
you figure out who was behind it?
No, all these accounts that had just been started up and that kind of like barely anybody real. It was really probably bots. And Al Jazeera says it's bots doing it. They couldn't find enough actual trolls, so they had to, But this is a song about, certainly about me and Kamala, and probably about most anybody who comes to any of our shows. It's you're all guilty.
If you are a fan of democracy, if you have a problem with state theocracy, if you're having issues with minority rule or with the propaganda they teach your kids in school, you don't like invading armies bent on thievery, if you think it's wrong to steal someone else's country, there's just one explanation, though it may be getting trite. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you don't like the idea of shooting mortar rounds at kids, it must be because you just don't like the Yids. Israel bombs hospitals if you heard that on the news. It must be because that network doesn't like the Jews. All those UN agencies crying genocide secretly still blame us for the way that Jesus died. There's just one explanation we keep within our sights. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you think free speech is a really good thing, if you fear the future that censorship may bring, if you think Mark Zuckerberg is a pawn of the CIA, if you don't believe whatever the Western leaders say, if you march and chant from the river to the sea, if you say you'll keep fighting until Palestine is free, there's just one explanation right there in black and white. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you're not a fan of home demolitions, if you've got some kind of problem with the Zionist position, it can't be that you care about humanity. It can't be that you just want some sanity. If you don't like the slaughter, you'd better just stand by. Don't speak out or else we'll all know the reason why. There's just one explanation, the one from the far right. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite.
Let's do. I imagine, I'm sure it was the case that in 1945 there were American politicians saying, oh, if only we had known that the Holocaust was happening, we would have started letting Jews back into the country before 1944. But you can be sure that there will be people saying that now, in a year from now. If only we had known they were planning on killing them all, we would have done something. Congress and the Bundestag, you'll see them wring their hands. Try to take two. In the Congress and the Bundestag, you'll see them wring their hands and say how they wish in hindsight they tried to No, that's wrong. That's the other way. Okay. I've only done this song 50 times in the past month. In the Congress and the Bundestag, you'll see them wring their hands and say how they wish in hindsight they tried to understand, how they wish they'd seen the warning signs and heard the generals speak and believed them when they talked about the vengeance they would wreak. How they should have known this was not idle conversation, how they should have listened harder when they said elimination. Yes, once it's all too late and the graveyards are all filled, once the last Palestinians killed.
On Manhattan Island, in the halls of the UN, the whole world will come together to say never again. They'll open a museum full of relics of the past before those who used to live there resisted to the last. We'll look at pictures of the rubble with the dead limbs poking through. The viewers will shed a tear and wish the leaders knew before the war ended in the way Ben-Gvir had willed. Once the last Palestinians killed. In the parliament they'll say, perhaps we should have listened instead of purging Europe's biggest party of internal opposition. Should have paid attention to the millions in the streets, to those massive crowds around the globe voting with their feet. Should have read the signs, should have listened to their words instead of denouncing all the talk of genocide as just absurd. Should have looked at the pictures of the bodies charred and grilled. Once the last Palestinians killed. When the last tower block was flattened, in the days before the last bakery was bombed, in this total war when there were still kindergartens, when the hospitals still stood, this would have been the time to question if we should have been sending all those weapons instead of barring them complete. If instead of cheering on the evil enemy's defeat, we might have asked if there was anywhere left for flour to be milled. Once the last Palestinians killed. When the project is complete and they make the desert bloom, once they finish turning cities into tombs, once the dead are out of sight and buried in the ground, once the rubble has been bulldozed and no one hears the sound of dying children screaming from somewhere down below, once the shopping malls are gleaming and no one needs to know how many babies' bodies are in this soil that we've tilled. Once the last Palestinians killed. Once the last Palestinians killed. Oh yeah. St. Patrick. There's a lot of people around the world, perhaps particularly around the Arab world and North Africa, that talk about how if they had only a land bridge and they could march towards Gaza, they would. But it's a lot of places to go through to get there, like the ocean with the U.S. Navy in it. But back when the U.S. invaded Mexico, it was a lot more practical. If you wanted to desert, switch sides, join the other army, which is what a couple hundred folks, mostly from Ireland, but also some from Poland, U.S., England, elsewhere, did. Thought I'd finish that sentence.
Glad to hear it.
My name is John Riley. I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go, enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. And it was there in the pueblos and hillsides that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. So in the midst of these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. Lovely. We marched neath the green flag of St. Patrick, emblazoned with Erin Gobra, bright with the harp and the shamrock, and the Libertad Republica. Just 50 years after Wolf Tone, 5,000 miles away, the Yanks called us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may, but from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. I've only did this. This happened before. I did that to you at Club Passim 20 years ago, too. We fought them in 5 major battles. Churubusco was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each mortar blast. Most of us died on that hillside in the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. Lovely. Huh? Oh, good idea. Yeah, I don't know, singer-songwriters, or at least certain ones like me, like we're so unused to playing with other musicians that we forget our own songs if we're not like playing the little melodic riff and we're actually like trying to let somebody else do that, like, then I just forget. I don't know if other people do that. I bet I'm not the only one, but I hope I'm not the only one. Doing anything like that within this kind of proximity to the Berklee College of Music is really embarrassing, though. So we did that earlier song about the FBI and the raid on the offices in 1971 that revealed COINTELPRO. But the COINTELPRO started with the formation of the FBI. The FBI is a secret police force. It's not a bureau for investigation. That's never what they've been about. They're really horrible at doing investigations. They can't investigate anything for shit. Like, they couldn't even figure out who broke into their offices. For 40 years, they were trying to figure out who broke into their office. They could never figure that out. It was like obvious. Like, it was like, if they had just like checked local hotel records, it would have been, they would have figured it out really quick. Who rented a car? Who stayed in the hotel? I mean, it was like they weren't making it that difficult. But you know, I'm not an FBI agent, so what do I know? But they just do a terrible job at investigating anything. You know, the only time they investigated the Klan was when President Johnson ordered Hoover to form a committee to investigate the Klan. Otherwise, they never were going to do that because their whole MO was to destroy the left from beginning to end. That's always been what they're about. And when the FBI started out,
Their first big action was the Palmer raids, and they went all over the country, all over the United States, with the American Legion as their sort of right-wing veteran shock troops, informants, and the Legion went around burning down all the union halls of the IWW, and the arresting thousands and thousands of European members to deport them to Europe, and the entire leadership of the organization. It was all an FBI operation. In 1919 called the Palmer Raids, ordered by the discredited Attorney General Palmer, who left office soon thereafter. And it was on the 11th of November, 2 years after the Russian Revolution, 1 year after the end of World War I, that they launched the Palmer Raids. And in the town of Centralia, not far from where I live in Portland, Oregon, the particular attack on that town's Union Hall became a thing of legend because many people were killed.
It was the 11th of November, 1919. If I were to tell the story and try to set the scene, it was in the town of Centralia in Washington State, where still today so many people can't forget the date. The war was on, and the way the press put on the spin, they named all the Wobblies the enemy within. They were German agents, and if that line didn't stick after the Russian Revolution, they just called them Bolsheviks. The Seattle General Strike was earlier that year. The timber barons were determined it wouldn't happen here. The Palmer Raids were on from the west coast to the east. Arson, death, and deportation till the Union's deceased. The hall destroyed a year before. This time they prepared. Those who lost so much before decided to be there on the anniversary of the ending of the war. They were prepared for self-defense because they knew the score. Across the country when the Union was attacked, in Centralia, the Wobblies fought back. The patriotic mob was marching past the Union Hall. In uniformed formation, several legionnaires would fall as they went inside the building. The gunshots would resound from Union men who thought they had the right to stand their ground. The cops would not protect them, but afterwards they came to charge 7 Wobs with murder in the prosecutor's name. But not before a power cut turned off the light, and the mob came to the jail that night. Across the country when the Union was attacked, in Centralia the Wobblies fought back. They grabbed Wesley Everest, dragged him from his cell. The things they did to him are too horrible to tell. They hung this Union organizer beneath the bridge on Mellon Street, brought his body back, laid it at his cellmates' feet, who each got 25 to 40 in a railroad court, in a trial as unfair as it was short. This is a story of the workers, how they were held in check when they lynched Wesley Everest with a rope around his neck. Across the country when the Union was attacked, in Centralia the Wobblies fought back. Now it's been more than a century since that abomination, since the war against the Wobblies across all of creation, since the FBI was formed to stop a revolution complete with lies and defamation, legal persecution, and sending in the Legion to do the dirty job, protected by police like a proxy lynch mob. Doesn't matter if you like it, you can disagree. I'm just telling you a tale from U.S. history. Across the country when the Union was attacked, in Centralia the Wobblies fought back. It was the 11th of November, 1919.
What's that? Oh, we should, yeah. But I was just thinking about another, the one, I mean, I think about this often, how the same kinds of historical circumstances can give rise to such radically different situations. Like at the end of World War I, so many returning veterans were able to be mobilized into groups like the American Legion and turned into right-wing fighting squad for the business elite. But then in other situations, right at the same time, like in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, the general strike was largely made up of returning veterans. So the same group of people from the same sorts of backgrounds, the same working class, young, unemployed people could be mobilized to participate in a general strike against the business interests in Winnipeg, while at exactly the same people in the same kind of situation can be mobilized to attack union members in another place. You know, the same year, within a few months of each other, you had the Greenwood Massacre in Tulsa, where hundreds of black people in an entire neighborhood was destroyed, and hundreds of black people killed, and an entire neighborhood destroyed by a white mob. But the same time period in West Virginia, you had 15,000 miners, 3,000 of them black, participating in an armed uprising against business interests there, And what's the difference? They had the union movement in West Virginia. In Oklahoma, it had been destroyed years earlier, in 1917. But in, we had the situation in Centralia where a mob of anti-union people raided this jail and tortured and lynched Wesley Everest, right? But then another mob of white settlers in another state in Wisconsin in 1854, they also attacked a jail, but they weren't there to attack the person who was being held in there. They were there to liberate him and transport him to Canada. And this is a song called In Wisconsin in 1854, or How Joshua Glover Became a Canadian.
Gather round me, friends, I'll tell to you a tale about the day one young man was taken off to jail and shipped north up Lake Michigan for a trial to see if he should be sent back to live in slavery. A life of bondage was what Joshua had seen. Then he left Missouri and moved to Racine, where he worked in a sawmill by the lake shore in Wisconsin in 1854. When the word got round, outrage spread. The idea of sending people back to the bondage they had fled was one that could not be allowed to stand, although it was the law of the land. Passed by the Congress 4 years prior, guaranteed to start a prairie fire, which was what would be in store in Wisconsin in 1854. Thousands went to Haymarket Square, the most people who had ever gathered there. In Racine, where they decided they'd go see how that trial would go up in Milwaukee. When they got there and looked around, saw the thousands more people on the ground who had come on horseback, ready for war in Wisconsin in 1854. The jail turned out to be no match at all for all of the people who'd answered the call. They laid siege to the place till they'd gotten their man, and then together the thousands they ran. Away from the cops and then onward forth, the Underground Railroad brought him north, so Joshua Glover would be a slave nevermore in Wisconsin in 1854. No more attempts would ever be made since that Milwaukee prison raid to enforce this federal law after the rising that everyone saw. It was dead in the water, and that's a fact. The Fugitive Slave Act. When all the people said what they stood for in Wisconsin in 1854. Gather round me, friends, I'll tell to you a tale about the day one young man was taken off to jail and shipped north of Lake Michigan for a trial to see if he should be sent back to live in slavery.
This is not an indication that this is almost over, because it's just such a rich, deep lesson in history, listening to David and Kamala. But I have to go upstairs and put lunch together, so I'm going to send these two things around. This helps us keep these programs going, and our staff nurtured, and performers like David Rovix coming back to us. This is our way to keep in touch with you. Let us have your mailing list, let us have your email address. We ran out of forms, but please, and stay for lunch. It might be at 2 o'clock if we keep on enjoying David and them. 1 o'clock is the usual, but Daniel Ellsberg went on till 2:30. So it depends on how much we like this thing. And we like this thing. So I'm going to send these two and go upstairs. Thank you.
We'll be finishing up well before lunchtime, so y'all should really stick around for lunch and sign the email list. And never listen to somebody when they say, oh, just follow us on Instagram. Don't do that. Sign the email list. Use your email. Use your brain. Check your email. Stop relying on social media corporations to find out anything, because they're not going to tell you. When you need to know it, they're not going to tell you. And of course, the email can suck too, right? Gmail sucks. Right? They've relegated everything to the promotions folders. You're not going to hear about anything on Gmail either. But good luck with that. But get your own email address. From an independent. Like
Proton Mail.
Hotmail. Like what? No, what is it? Like,
Proton Mail.
Proton Mail, or or the what is that? The application Outlook. Just forget about all these companies. They're not helping at all. There's my advice. And read the book. What's the book called again?
Invisible Rulers.
Invisible Rulers. Yeah, there's a really great book if you understand why social media really sucks, and you should not rely on it for anything other than disinformation. Yeah, great book.
Propaganda, rumors.
Yeah, she calls it the collision of the propaganda machine with the rumor mill, the modern era. Okay, but let's see. We're going to do a couple more songs before lunchtime.
Section 12?
Oh, Section 12, yeah. Oh, yeah, so I've put out 4 albums since the Holocaust in Gaza began in October 2023. The first album is called Notes from a Holocaust, and it came out in January. But it's 20 songs about the Holocaust in Gaza, and it was removed from Spotify, and for some reason it has not been removed from anywhere else yet. But it was removed from Spotify, and it appears that at least one of the songs on the album violates Section 12 of the of the Terrorism Act of 2000 in the UK, because the UK doesn't have freedom of speech. Most countries don't. This country has this sort of freedom of speech thing, so you can actually say nice things about proscribed organizations, and that's legal. But if you send them $1, then you're breaking the law and go to prison for the rest of your life. And if you want to know more about that, there's a banner just outside the church about the Holy Land Five, who are all people who are spending decades and decades in prison for sending a little bit of money that went through exactly the same same circuits of transferring money that the U.S. State Department had used just a few years earlier, which they then decided were no longer okay and were aiding terrorism, to send food and medicine through those channels. So now there's still a bunch of guys in prison for up to 65 years for sending wrong money to people, to the wrong people, for food and medicine. But but in the UK, it's even easier to violate these laws and to face long prison sentences. All you actually have to do there is say something. Like, there's a woman named Sarah Wilkinson who's just been arrested for the second time for the tweeting the wrong tweets, and she's facing potentially 14 years in prison, as are all these other journalists in England who keep on getting arrested for violating Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. And I'm quite certain that if you watch Western media, you've never heard about this at all. You haven't heard a thing about this, right? If the only way you'd know about this stuff is if you're following other sources of information. The Western media is completely ignoring what's going on in England. They've arrested dozens of journalists, and they're charging with them under this Section 12, and they're facing 14 years in prison for if they're found guilty. And they're being brutally arrested, they're being brutalized by police, and that's the main point, is to brutalize journalists, including, like, older women with all kinds of medical needs, and just doesn't matter. What happened to Freddie Gray in Baltimore? That's what they did to Sarah in England. She's a 60-year-old woman. They had her handcuffed in the back of a paddy wagon with no seat belts or anything on, so she was just like being knocked around back there.
And they kept driving around and around. It wasn't like they went directly to the jail.
Yeah, she was noticing where they were, and they were like going all over London to horrible, horrible stuff that could have killed her. And this is a song called Section 12, which, this isn't the song that's going to get us arrested, though. But there's another song that violates Section 12.
We could get to that.
Yeah, we could do that.
We'll give you that one.
We'll do the song that violates Section 12 next, It's being broadcast in the UK, we could get arrested for that, maybe.
A century ago, they came to take away Palestine, and in its wake, the people became refugees in the West Bank and Gaza, across the seas. In 2006, Hamas was elected, but in case they thought this might be respected, it was not. As the Western leaders said, democracy is good as long as it's led by people who know how to submit without fighting back a bit. By cooperative colonials who stay within their beat and not go protest at the fence that they have no food to eat. By submissive subjects who will quietly lay by, watch their people parched as the water taps run dry. Not by rebels who still dream of their land, not by anyone who might think of making a stand.
Do you support the resistance? If you dare say yes I do, then under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act, you are a terrorist too.
You don't need to send money. It's easier than that. You can violate the law in the window of a chat if you think occupied people have certain rights. You might find yourself within the sights of the MI5 and the British Crown, facing 14 years once the trial goes down. A ban on any posting, no communication, silencing people across the nation.
Do you support the resistance? If you dare say yes I do, then under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act, you are a terrorist too.
If you support Ukrainian resistance, sleep well. You won't get caught up in this, pray tell. These charges are all about the man of the hour. First he purged labor, now he's consolidating power, silencing the voices who dare condemn his role in the slaughter of children. As millions of people are under attack, arresting those who might praise the ones who fight back.
Do you support the resistance? If you dare say yes I do, then under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act, you are a terrorist too. Do you support the resistance? If you dare say yes I do, then under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act, you are a terrorist too. Do you support the resistance?
Well, now we have to do the one that actually breaks, that violates Section 12. I mean, there's probably a few of them that might, but this one explicitly violates Section 12. And this one, there's no question. This definitely violates Section 12.
And this is the one that if you find the link to the Spotify list for the Notes for a Holocaust, then you will see a list of the songs, except this one. Its name has even gone. Yeah.
Yeah, even the title violates Section 12, apparently. And, you know, the most entertaining thing on this, along these lines, is when George Orwell's 1984 disappeared from the from the library on Amazon. But yeah, this is actually more insidious than that. That was just like copyright issues, I think. Still weird though. Orwell would have been happy though, I think.
Half the world's trade passes by here. So much of it goes through Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, in the port of Gaza, no ships can arrive and not a boat can leave. While every day hundreds are dying beneath the rain of missiles fired from the air. Millions of starving Palestinians on the run and being slaughtered everywhere. No safe place in the Gaza Strip. No armies coming to defend. While all over the planet, people are asking, when will this savage bombing end? How many more thousands of children can be killed while we stand by? How can we just live our lives while we watch the babies die? Shukran Jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. For a country that doesn't have an air force, they're painting black, red, green, and white on the helicopters they use to board the ships to show their cause is right. The president said this terrorism must stop right away, to which the Houthis respond, yes, that's exactly what we are trying to say. Shukran Jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Ships are going all the way around Africa to avoid the Houthi net. If Israel wants trading partners now, they might be just a little harder to get. We can blockade ports all over, north, south, east, and west. But the Houthi army are the ones who are no doubt blocking the traffic the best. Shukran Jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall.
Do one more, if a song. We'll do one more, and thank you all so much for coming, and thanks so much to Eric Royer for joining us on the stage. And hope to see you all for lunch. And if you know anybody in Portland, Oregon, the last gig we're doing on this tour is Saturday next week, in Portland, Oregon, which is, I know, a long way from here, but there's a lot of people from Boston out there, I tell you that. And all the best Bostonians stay in Boston, I must say, but there's some pretty good ones out there. I think all the best people tend not to move to the West Coast. It's like the people that move to the West Coast are usually the people who couldn't get along wherever they were from. And it's not necessarily good, you know. They go out there and then they hope that they expect to find all these radicals that weren't in their town in Indiana, and then they find a bunch of Americans, and like it's you know. But I digress. Not a fan of the West Coast anymore, even though I lived there. I feel a bit stuck, but it could be much worse. You know, it's beautiful, as long as you like the smell of piss. I mean, it's literally the case. Like the entirety of downtown smells like piss, and this is not the fault of the people actually pissing. This is the fault of the whole structure of the complete lack of bathrooms for the thousands of people living and dying on the streets. It's over 100 every year die on the streets of Portland, just from living on the streets. Barely even makes the news. Over 1,000 in Los Angeles every year. This is a song about a place where everything's way more fucked up than the U.S., though.
If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth. If a song could take down borders, take down fences, make them fall, liberate all those imprisoned, kept behind the ghetto walls. If a song could stop the bombs, so the next might be the last. If a song could change the future, so it won't be like the past. If a song could be a missile fired from the Iron Dome, if it could protect the children, keep them safe within their homes, if a song could raise an army and transport it on command, take us all Palestine to defend the Holy Land. If a song could be concrete and put to use to rebuild, if it might turn back the clock, bring back all the babies killed. Song could be a blueprint, instructions to show us how. If a song could change the world, then let us sing it now. If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much to Ben Groskup, and thanks so much to Dean. Yeah, thank you.
We'll do one more then. Okay. Taking that as an encore. When the world has gone crazy and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around, and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance, as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity and a kiss behind the barricade.